Okay, welcome IS101 students. Today we are going to talk about Microsoft Excel. I am going to assume that you know little or nothing about Excel and basically start at the beginning. So, uh, we're taking a look here at a blank Excel workbook, and one thing you should notice right up front is that Excel has a ribbon up on top, just like Word does, and that is not a coincidence. Microsoft decided to design these programs, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, etc., with the same look and feel common to all those. So if you learn one of the programs, then you're familiar how to use the rest of them. So we have a ribbon tab up here with the different tabs that you can click on and switch from tab to tab, just like in Word. We have a few of the same tab names: the Home tab, the Insert tab, Page Layout, and the Review tab. Even though the contents are not the same, the tab names are. And then, of course, all the other tabs are completely different and new. A few of these you may not have because I've got a special version of Excel here, like Power Pivot and Acrobat, etc., and the Developer tab. But otherwise, these are Excel tabs. Now, please note that the File tab works just like it does in Word. It takes you out to Backstage View, where you can go in and change options for Excel just like you do in Word. You go back here again, you've got your printing options, your saving, save as, and all these other same options that we had in Word. We'll talk more about this later, but right now let's just focus on Excel. So we are back in a blank Excel window here. Now, the file that gets created for Excel is known as a workbook, and the default file format for Excel is XLSX. If you look up here on top, you'll see Book 1 Excel. This is the generic name that is assigned until you give your file an actual name. It'll always say Book 1. This is a workbook. A workbook file can have worksheets in there. When you open up a new Excel file, you'll have 3 worksheets by default, but you can have many, many more worksheets depending on your needs. You might ask, well, what's the purpose of worksheets? Well, say for example, you had a small company and you wanted to do some financial information on different departments, say from the sales department, from the research and development department, and from manufacturing. You could have a workbook for each of those 3 departments, or you could have one workbook and have 3 different tabs that represent each of those different departments, and that's what we'll show you here. So sheet 1, 2, and 3 are the default names. You can right click on a sheet and go up here and rename it. So we'll call this one Sales. Press enter, right click, rename. We'll call this R&D for Research and Development. Right click here and we'll rename it, and we'll call this one Manufacturing. Okay, so now you've got 3 different worksheets here. It doesn't, you don't see it on the screen, but you're actually shifting from one different worksheet to another. You can right click on these sheets again and change the tab color, which is nice. Make each one unique. We'll make that one red. We'll make this one blue. And we'll make this one yellow. When you switch to a different tab, you see the tab colors. If you're on a particular tab, you don't really see the full color. So if you click on R&D, you just see a little bit of the blue. If you come off it, you'll see that it's a blue tab, and it works that way with all the tabs. If you want to create another worksheet tab, you simply click on the plus sign. So we'll create one. It creates one called Sheet 4. We'll have to rename this. Think of a department. Let's call it HR for Human Resources. We'll right click on it and we'll give it a color here and make it yellow. So now, oh, we already have yellow. Let's change the color to green. So sales, HR, R&D, manufacturing. Now notice up here on the Home tab in the Cells group and the Format button, it gives you some of the options that you see down below, where you can rename whatever sheet you have highlighted. You can move or copy a sheet to a different position, or you can change the color down here also. Speaking of move or copy, you can also do that down here by right-clicking on a sheet and saying move or copy. So you can choose to move it before or after another sheet. Let's say we want to move it before the sales sheet. So this should move manufacturing all the way to the left over here, which is exactly what it does. Okay, so that's how the worksheet concepts work, and we'll be talking more about worksheets later. Now, let's take a look at our layout of our system here in Excel. Excel is a grid system, and it works on rows and columns. Please note that the columns are designated by letters of the alphabet, and the rows are designated by numbers. For those of you that are curious, you might like to know, well, how many rows and how many cells can I have in an Excel worksheet? The answer to that is you can have over 16,384 columns, and you can have 1,048,000, check that, 1,048,576 rows. So I don't think you're going to be breaking Excel anytime soon. Since they use letters of the alphabet, you might wonder, well, what happens when we get to letter X, the end of the alphabet? I mean, letter Z, not X. Notice they start over again, doubling up. So what started off as column A over here, now it goes to AA, AB, AC, and if you move the right arrow, you can see how it progresses through, and it'll go up to Z, and then it goes to BA. Over here was AA, BA, and it goes all the way through. The last cell that you can have in Excel is, the last column you can have is column XFD, but I seriously doubt if you will ever get to that point. Over 16,000 columns, over 1 million rows. Now, wherever you click on Excel, that becomes the active cell. The active cell is always defined as the intersection of a column and a row, with a column designator given first. In this situation, we have the active cell in column N and row 15. So this is cell N15. If we click over here, that is D4. If you click up here, it's A1. Now you can also have more than one cell. You could have a range of cells that you're working with. Say you're having 3 columns and 4 rows, just like that. This is called a range of cells, and a range has a special way to designate it. Let me bring this over here and show you. So let's just move it off to the side here. We'll have, let's say we're going from column A over to column D and down to row 5. So our range would be shown like A1 colon D, whoops, colon, come on, D5. So this specifies a block of cells starting with A1 in the upper left column and going to D5 in the lower right column. So what this would look like in Excel would be A1 and D5. That is the range of cells that we're talking about. And when you specify a range, you always put the upper leftmost one cell, a colon, and then the lower rightmost cell after the colon. So that is a range of cells. Okay, now if you look up here, This box right here is called the name box. And this box shows you whatever cell you're in. Even if you're in a range, if you have a range, it always shows you the upper leftmost cell. So here the range is H7 through J12, but it shows you the upper leftmost cell in the range. If you just have one cell, it shows that also. Now, something interesting, you can give a name to a range of cells, and then when you refer to it, you just refer to the name. Like, for example, say you had these 4 cells here, 1, 2, 3, 5 cells, and you clicked up here and you call this Saturn. You pressed enter. So now you have a range called Saturn. How do you know that you have a range called Saturn? If you go up into the Formula tab and you go into something called the Name Manager, you can see that you've created a entry in here called Saturn. We'll come back to this later. Okay, so Excel works on intersecting grids, intersecting rows and columns. Now, what can you put in these cells? You can put in alphanumeric characters, which are letters of the alphabet, or you can put numbers or a combination of both. Excel is a number crunching, number management program, so the primary thing you'd be putting in would be numbers. But you might ask, well, if you're dealing with numbers, why would you use alphanumeric characters such as the letters of the alphabet? And that is because we use those to create names to our rows and columns. So for example, say we were analyzing sales in 4 different regions of the country, the West, North, South, and East. So we could type West here in this cell, tab over, type North in there, tab over here, type East, and then South. So this is where you would type in alphanumerics for labels. And then over here you might have for quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So each column represents a part of the country. Each row represents one of the 4 quarters of a year, like January through March, April through June, July through September, and October through December. Now, let me just get rid of everything here. You can highlight everything and delete it. Actually, we're just going to press the delete key. When you enter information into a cell in Excel, you have to have that cell highlighted, and then you just type in the information. If you type the information in, you must either press the enter key or press the down arrow or the right arrow to move to a different cell. The information is not logged until you do one of those 3 things. If you type South, you press the enter key, it's going to go down to the next row. If you want to move across to the next column instead, you would use the right arrow key. And we'll type in the last one, North, South, East, West. So we'll type in East. Now, you can apply formatting to these headings just like you do in Word. You have to highlight the things you want to format. Go to the Home tab, and you can bold them. You can change the point size. You can change the color and do all those fun things. Now look what happened over here. Okay, they all fit in, but if you have something in a cell that's too big for the cell, let's say North. If you click up here, you'll look up in this section right here. You can see it's Northeast, but you don't see the whole thing down here in the cell. That's because there's not enough room. If you come up here and you double click on the dividing line between the 2 columns, it'll auto expand to fit the size of whatever you have. This right here is called the formula bar, and whatever you can type in information for a cell in the formula bar, like, or you can type it right into the cell also. And when you type something up here, you can either press the enter key or click on the checkbox to enter into the cell. Okay, so that is the formula bar, and we'll be using this a lot more here pretty soon. Now, the real power from working with Excel comes with numbers, not just the labels. So I'm going to delete this here. I'm going to put my quarters in. Q1. Oh, by the way, if you want to edit a cell, you can double click on it and do your editing right in place. Or you can click on it, press the F2 key, and you're in edit mode. You can back up, make changes. Or if you wanted to change something completely, you just click in the cell and just say, well, we don't have any more directions. Let's just say yes. Okay. Whatever you type in a cell just goes right over what's already there. If you need to edit something, you double click in the cell and you'll be at the end of the contents and you can add to it. Or you can click in the cell and press the F2 key, puts you into edit mode, and then you can edit what you have there. Okay, let me get back to my original regions here: north, south, east, and west. Okay, whoops. Let's put the quarters in here. Q3, Q4. Okay, and then we can put some numbers in here that'll represent sales figures. So let's put in 125, tab over here, 244, tab over here, 412, and tab over here, and we'll put in 324. We'll come down here, 444, tab over 167, tab over here, 318, and we'll come over here, 414, 556. Just making these numbers up, by the way. 890, 389, 156, and we'll finish out for quarter 4, 498, tab 256, tab 812, tab, and 349. Okay, now these don't look like dollars and cents, even though that's what they represent. If you highlight all these numbers here, you can go up to the number tab, number section on the home tab, and you can see you've got different formats that you can apply. And in this case, we're talking about currency, so we will make it look like it's dollars and cents. Since everything ends in a even number of dollars, no pennies, you can come up here and decrease or increase the decimal. We're going to decrease the decimal 2 times and get rid of the pennies because we're not working with pennies. Okay, you can select everything here. If you want to put it in the middle, you can choose the alignment. Now everything is in the middle. Now here's where the power of Excel comes into play. Let's say we wanted to add up for quarter 1 how your company did for these 4 regions. So you would click over here and we will have to create a formula. A formula is something that you create, and it starts always with an equal sign. That's how Excel knows it's a formula. You're going to tell it to do some work. Okay, so we want to add up columns H, I, J, and K and row 9. So we want to add up this cell, this cell, this cell, and this cell. When you refer to cells in Excel, you don't refer to the values in this cell. You refer to the cell name. So the cell name here is H9. Right over here, you could type H9, or even easier, you could just click in the cell. Okay, so H9, now we want to type a plus sign, and we want to click on this cell here. which is I9. Type another plus sign. Click on this cell here, which is J9. One more plus sign. And click on this cell right here as K9. So here's our formula. And we can complete the formula by pressing the Enter key or clicking right up here on the Enter check mark. Okay, so look what it did. It automatically added all those numbers up for you. That is very cool. And if you look up here in the formula bar, it'll show you what the formula was that we just created. Back here in the cell, though, it'll actually show you the result of the formula. Now, suppose you wanted to add up the next 3 quarters for the different parts of the country. Well, you could go in and you could repeat doing what we did here, typing all that, but Excel makes your life much easier than that. You see this little green rectangle right down here? That's called the autofill handle. And what you do is you move the cursor over the autofill handle until it becomes a black cross, and you click and you drag down 3 times, and look what it did. It knew what you did right here in this first row, so it did the same thing for these rows here. Up here, if you look at the formula, it's dealing with everything in row 9, H9, I9, J9, and K9. If you look down here, it's dealing with everything in row 10, H10 plus J10 plus K10 and I10. If you look down here, it's dealing with everything in row 11, and over here it's dealing with everything in row 12. Excel knows that if we're going down with our formula to a new row, to adjust and work on the numbers that are in that row, not the row where we came from. So that is really the power of Excel. Now, suppose we wanted to add up how each different part of the country was doing. So we could create another formula down here. How do you start a formula? You start it with the equal sign. Okay, so we would go back and we would do the same thing. We would say equal H9 plus H10, type a plus sign, click on H11, plus sign, H12, press the Enter key, and there's the total for this north section of the country. Now if we come back in here, we use the autofill handle, and we can drag right across and do the same thing for the 3 other parts of the country. Now if you come over here and you want to find out what the total sales were, you should have the same number by adding up these columns over here or adding up these rows. Now, since addition is such a common thing in Excel, they have created a built-in, something called a function, a built-in function. It's called AutoSum. So if you click in a cell and you want to add the numbers up to the above it or to the left of it, you come up here to AutoSum and you click on the sum. And it'll build your formula right here using the sum function. So you can click on the Enter key and it should add up the sum of this column, which is also the sum of this row right here. If you remove these, hang on a second, we don't want to do that, or do we? If you remove those, you can see it's adding up this column here, but if we put those numbers back in, it still should be the same thing if you added up the different regions of the country. So you need to understand formulas and functions in Excel. They're both very powerful. A formula is something that you create. A function is something that's built in to Excel. You can use a function within a formula, but you cannot use a formula within a function. Functions you create to get whatever work done needs to be done, and formulas are what you write to get work done. If I said functions are what you create, I meant to say you create formulas, and formulas can have Excel and have functions in them. Okay, I'm going to take a little break here.